Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Colony Drop, a Gundam podcast. My name is Isaac.
And my name is Brian, and this is a podcast where we talk about anything and everything related to the Mobile Suit Gundam franchise. From the anime, to the movies, to the models, to the manga, to the music, you name it, we do it all. Isn't that right, Isaac?
That's absolutely right. And today will be our first time doing something very special, Brian. What are we doing today?
We're going to take a series that we hated and rewrite it.
Sure. I mean, yeah, you got to call it how it is. They call him Blunt Brian on the forums.
It's been a rough week, but the gloves are off, listeners.
We're starting the year with boldness.
That's right. So, listeners, if you've listened the last few weeks, we covered the seminal Gundam Wing. However, Isaac and I did not really enjoy it too much, to be frank. But we don't think it needs to be that way. I think it's a solid premise. With a few tweaks, I think it could be a really good show, right, Isaac?
Brian, you took the words right out of my mouth. It's a fixer-upper. And today, we're a script-writing team of salvagers. And we're going to salvage this rotting, rusted carcass and try to turn it into something serviceable, enjoyable, and different.
While I was doing this rewrite, Isaac, I was wondering something, and it dawned on me, and I went and consulted with our mutual friend who really loves Gundam Wing.
Oh, boy.
And he agreed. So, Netflix just, they're putting out the live-action Gundam movie. They got a lot of the series on there now. They seem to be the U.S. destination for Gundam. Why are they not asking Sunrise for a reboot of Wing, based on the Glory of the Losers manga with modern animation? That would kill in the millennial market. And Netflix is putting out all these anime, and a lot of them are, maybe not very good. The people who grew up on Gundam Wing are in the range now where they're paying for Netflix. I don't know. I feel like that's a no-brainer, Isaac.
I mean, sure, but at the same time, I wouldn't put the onus on Netflix. Like, the weight and the responsibility, I doubt there's, like, a committee at Netflix that's like, well, we reviewed the lore and... and the previous types of series that you have in this whole Gundam genre. Have you thought of rebooting this one specific series from the 90s? Netflix doesn't care. They're just going to pump out or, stream whatever content Sunrise gives them and, call it a day. Whatever they get on their platform, they know the Gundam fans will go there, especially since their numbers just are monolithic compared to like Funimation or any other streaming platform.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's someone's job over there to look into new anime, and this one seems like a slam dunk to me, but what do I know? I'm just a guy with a microphone.
You're more than that, Brian, because today you're going to tell us your rewrite for Gundam Wing, and if there's time, Gundam Wing Endless Waltz.
All right, who should go first, Isaac? You want me to go first?
I would love for you to go first.
All right, so here we go. I got 5 pages written about this bad boy, so let's see how far we get.
Pages? He did it by hand, folks. You hear that? Was it in cursive too?
No, but I actually recently just wrote in cursive again. I wrote a letter to my son from Santa.
Wow.
His first year where he could really understand who Santa was, so I wrote him a note, and I figured I needed to make it look different, so I wrote it in cursive because he'd never seen cursive before. So.
I was about to say, his mind's probably blown. He's probably like, oh my god, Santa can like write in magic words.
He showed very little interest in the letter, and
of course
more interest in the fact that Santa had eaten the cookies. So
well, he's got his priorities straight. Let me just say that. Good
yeah,
for him.
he knows sweets when he sees them. All right, to me, this is more of a light touch rewrite. I didn't want to scrap the whole thing and start completely from scratch. I tried to fix what was there. What did you call me? A salvager? So we're going to salvage. All right. So I'm going to break this into 2 halves. The first half and second half. In the first half, we got the first act. I'm going to call it Operation Meteor. So the story opens with the Gundam boys descending to Earth in a coordinated Operation Meteor drop, akin to the first episode of Gundam Seed, where the pilots take turns saying, for Zaft, for Zaft, for Zaft. Do you remember that episode, Isaac?
Yeah. Well, weren't they going to Heliopolis?
Yeah, they were going to Heliopolis. Not Earth, but it showed you that they were united in some sort of goal.
They're actually in communication, unlike the Gundam pilots in Gundam Wing.
Right, and in Gundam Wing, they would just kind of like randomly meandered to Earth on the same day, seemingly. Yeah. I mean, I understand there may be some clarification in other media, but from what you saw, it just seemed like they kind of just all decided to fly there on the same day. Anyway,
yeah.
In my version, the boys are all wearing White Fang uniforms.
Oh, wow.
And the Gundams have White Fang insignias on them, so that we realize they are all operatives of White Fang.
Wow.
And as they descend upon Earth, Cans and the engineers monitor the drop in the colonies.
Of course.
So this, number one, gives the boys some common ground, and two, sets up White Fang right from the beginning, which will help clarify the plot overall and resolves that ridiculous constraint that somehow the engineers who build the Gundams can't figure out a way to communicate with each other on the colonies, despite the fact that they can build the most advanced machines that humanity has ever seen. They can't somehow build a radio that works on a frequency that's not somehow blocked. And so from there, I think that Zechs can shoot down Hero, and he can meet Relina in kind of the same fashion. Once on Earth, the boys all have to attend a school, potentially Relina's academy, as part of their cover. I would also age them up a little bit to college freshmen. I think 15 is too young. 18 and 19 is still heartthrob status and like more reasonable for them to do what they are doing / have jobs. This school setting will create our central hub for the first half for the boys to interact, so we can get to know them better. They can get to know themselves better.
Interesting.
It sort of commits to a format that the show was like circling but never really committed to. They don't even have to know each other's names before school, Isaac. I think it would be interesting if they just called each other by their unit numbers. You know, that maybe before school they just called Hero like number 1.
They're like a sinister organization.
Yeah. And, you know, they can still go off and attack their own targets kind of at will. Otherwise, it'd be too easy to find.
Right.
We can then proceed through Zechs' acquisition of the Tall Geese and Treize's coup with minimal changes, I think. The one change I would make here, Isaac, is I would introduce Dorothy here a lot earlier on than we saw her in the show.
Okay.
I would have her tag along with Treize, learning the ropes or like being his intern.
Wow. So like a civilian intern, or is she an officer here from the get-go?
No, I think she's, you know, an officer in training, whatever the equivalent of like an intern officer is. I mean, Ramafeller's a little, like Oz is a little weird, right? It's not a...
Right. Like, is there a level to this? Like Dermail's like rubbing... Wait, you said she's shadowing Zechs or Treize?
Treize, yeah.
Oh, okay. Whoops. I thought you said Zechs for a second. I was like, wow, Dermail's really rubbing in Zechs' face like, you know, I wiped out your family. You know, by the way, my granddaughter will be your attaché for a while.
Oh, we're getting there. Don't worry.
Okay, Treize. Okay, that makes much more sense. Yeah, they're related anyways. So okay.
Yeah, exactly. I figure it goes along with the idea that someday Dermail thinks that she would ascend to some, you know, reasonable position of power after he's gone. So that'd be Act 2, and then Act 3 would be regrouping in space. So after the coup, the boys would try to return to space like in the original show, but while en route, Cans and Decim or whoever your bad guy is, I'll say this in terms of Endless Waltz, Isaac. I think overall that Cans and Decim are fairly interchangeable. So whoever you're going to pick for this show, whether it's Cans or Decim, one of those guys needs to be your bad guy in this spot. Whoever they are decides to try to drop a colony under the logic that the boys have failed, and this is the only option left for revenge for the assassination of Hiro Yui and the completion of Operation Meteor. The engineers then foil this plan. Perhaps they introduce some software lock on all of the colonies, preventing drop maneuvers. In retaliation, Cans jails all the engineers and disavows the Gundam boys, leaving them sort of stranded in space with nowhere to go. Oz then brokers peace, and Cans accepts while he figures out how to get around the colony drop lock and or make new Gundams or some other type of weapon. So this continues to clarify the plot, and, you know, setting up Cans is in the spotlight a lot earlier on. Like, if he's going to be my big bad at the end, Isaac, I need to see him earlier than like like episode 30 something, right?
Right, yeah. Guy in a vest shows up and starts giving orders, and you're like, "What's happening?
You're like, who are you? What is this show? What am I watching?
What is White Fang?"
So this also solves the problem of why didn't Cans try to drop a colony sooner? Like, if that was originally part of Operation Meteor, you know, if you go read what Operation Meteor was supposed to be, the Gundams are kind of an afterthought. It's kind of like, let's launch all these colonies, and then the Gundams will go massacre people. And it's kind of like, well, do you really need to massacre people if you drop all those colonies? So, you know, I'm still waiting for my colony drop. Like, they don't have to, like, not do that just because
after
the
we
Gundam
detonate
boys left.
the nukes, we'll send in the Marines.
Yeah, like just in case there's any left. Because you watch the show and then you think, okay, Operation Meteor is the Gundams, and then at the very end they're like, oh, it was supposed to be a colony. But it's kind of like, well, why didn't they just do it anyway?
Yeah.
If you don't like the Gundam boys, well, guess what? Good, they're on Earth, and you're going to launch the colony at Earth. You might get them too.
They never really... Well, maybe there is in the manga, but I just assumed, my headcanon was, Canes is the colony loyalist. He does not want to drop a single colony, as insane and, you know, evil as he kind of got. Barton, though, he only cares about power. He drop one colony, drop 10, as long as he ends up being the ruler.
Yeah.
So that's why I imagine they had a divergence of opinion.
But see, and that could very well be true. Again, having not read all of the side stories, I'm trying to be a typical fan here, listeners. I'm the guy that watched Gundam Wing on Cartoon Network. None of that headcanon was provided in the show. And if it was very subtle and I must have missed it, right? I mean...
Right, yeah.
And then on Oz's end, Dermail has no intention of keeping this peace that he has been brokered with Cans, and he intends to subjugate the colonies once enough mobile dolls are ready. This is important because it sets Oz and Ramafeller on a collision course with White Fang at the end of the first half. Now I know what my conflict is going to be going into the second half. I need that pivot to come before the last 10 episodes, so I think this is where you'd want to do it. And I think you could introduce Tuberov, the mobile dolls, and Wing Zero, kind of all with minimal changes. Up to this point, I think it's been a fairly light touch, so here's where I'm going to deviate a little bit harder.
Buckle up.
Here we go, listeners. Get ready. So in the second half, the first to act is going to be the Saint Kingdom. So with nowhere else to go, the boys head back to the Saint Kingdom for refuge with Relina, who they know now very well since they all attended the academy.
Of course.
They replace their White Fang insignias with Saint Kingdom insignias and become the Knights of the Saint Kingdom.
Holy shit. That's pretty cool.
So as Oz plans to attack the Saint Kingdom, Treize steps down in protest of the mobile dolls. Dorothy seizes this opportunity and leads the attack on the Saint Kingdom in his place.
Holy shit.
Utilizing all her knowledge she gained while going to the academy and everything that she learned from Treize from being his what did you call it? Attaché?
Yeah. And
it, like you said, further rubs it in Zechs' face because now she's, her dad already blew up his family once. Now she's going to do it again.
Sure.
So here we assume that the boys are depleted in terms of Gundams, similar to the show, and Oz overruns the Saint Kingdom, pretty much kind of like what happened. And when Relina surrenders, Noin causes some sort of diversion and allows the boys to hastily escape in whatever way that gets them in where they need to be in line with what happened in the show. There's some people who go so many different places in the show, Isaac, at different times. It was hard to remember. I'm thinking in broad terms here, right? So if you're listening to this and you think, well, that's not where this person was at this certain time, well, that's fine. We're just going to have to change it so it works very slightly, because in every episode they were stealing a tanker, stealing a helic, stealing a plane. One of them can just steal a plane 2 episodes earlier and it'll work out.
Wait, Brian, does Noin go down with the ship? She goes down with the Saint Kingdom?
No. I have big plans for Noin, Isaac. So Noin is taken into Oz custody along with Sandrock and Heavy Arms because she created the diversion for the boys to leave. So before escaping, though, we have a lot of work to do here on the Relina and Hero relationship, Isaac.
There's no scene, Brian, in your version where Relina stands on the beach looking at the sunset and calls for Hero to kill her?
You know what? You can have that, but you just got to do some extra stuff. So if we're really going to commit to this Relina and Hero thing, I need it to be a little better, Isaac. What we had wasn't sufficient for me. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to fix it, and then I'm going to set up something for later. So once Hero has Wing Zero from Zechs, perhaps either Hero gets stuck in the Zero system, or she sees it's taking a toll on him, so she becomes like a co-pilot. Not actually going anywhere, but maybe just plugging in to the Zero system while he's also in the Zero system to kind of get him out or to pull him out. So they can kind of share the mental load, if that makes sense. So while he's also plugged in, their minds connect in a very intimate way that they reach a deeper level of understanding with one another, some sort of empathetic understanding, much more similar to a new type connection than anything the show had.
Oh, no.
Maybe you could say their minds are compatible or something, but we'd have to come up with a reason why Relina would do this. Perhaps the rest of the boys have already left and she's the only person there with sort of the strongest chance of surviving going into the Zero system because she's younger, or perhaps they did some sort of analysis and her mind seems like it'll be compatible or something. Some sort of pseudoscience explanation is fine.
They just needed communication. Just communication is needed.
Exactly. The song hits and boom, you're off.
Rhythm emotional.
So she's successful in pulling Hero out of it, and now he knows how to better navigate Zero. We'll say that having 2 minds, even for a while, spreads out the data load intake on Hero's mind sufficiently for his mind to be able to learn to pick and choose what data to use and not to use so as to not be overwhelmed in the future. And this also helps explain why Hero gets better over time in terms of tolerating the Zero system than Zechs does. And then, so that's going to set up what's going on with Zechs. So then Act 2, we're going to get to the moon, Isaac. So remember in the moon, we were upset that not too much happened on the moon in the show, despite the freaking mobile doll factory being on the moon.
The massive size of the moon, yeah.
Probably the biggest military asset in the whole show. So I'm going to have a much bigger battle on the moon in this version. White Fang is going to take over the moon mobile doll factory, but since the factory is critical to Oz's success, Oz will not let it go so easily, and they try harder to get it back. Potentially, they are going to deploy Barge, the space fortress, and if once they realize, Isaac, that they potentially cannot get it back, they're just going to attempt to destroy the factory.
With what? Barge?
With Barge, yes.
Oh, okay.
So this would require White Fang to destroy Barge earlier, but I think that makes sense for Oz to use its best asset, which is Barge, to save its plan, which is the mobile dolls. I was a little, weirded out that they didn't, prevent the mobile dolls from falling into White Fang's hands more effectively in the show.
I think Treize should take all of that blame because he was so anti-Barge, right? That canon was just diametrically opposed to how he does things, but... if Dermail was really running the show, I think Barge would have been sniping colonies left and right?
Probably, yeah. Can you imagine if you're Isaac watching Gundam Wing, you were just waiting for that Barge cannon to fire, and that moment never really came.
Pretty much, I was just sitting watching TV, eating soda and popcorn with my little Oz uniform, just waiting for Dermail to give the order.
Every episode, he's like, "Oh, come on!"
It's what are you waiting for? The situation's deteriorating.
So all the space meandering before the final battle can kind of be relocated around this moon plot. So then Treize sees this happening, so he uses the chaos on the moon as a distraction and uses his Oz connections to free Noin and take the Gundams to Howard on Earth. Tuberoff and Dermail are going to be killed in a similar fashion to the show, but perhaps, Isaac, before dying, we see that Dorothy has inherited control of the mobile dolls from Tuberoff, maybe via some screen text or something, some sort of, computer thing that we read on the screen.
Sure.
And however, we also see that once Tuberoff's heart stops, a program is activated in the mobile doll factory.
What do you mean his heart stops?
Well, I'm just saying there's
it's synced to his... Oh, right, I see what you mean. It's synced to his, pacemaker or something.
Correct. Basically, this thing that was programmed to go live if and when he died.
I thought you meant there's just a scene where the situation's so stressful we just see Tuberoff kind of slump over.
He died via a heart attack? No.
Yeah, just the diet of custards and root beer flow it did him in.
White Fang just had to hold out long enough for the root beer to get him.
Yeah. He just couldn't take it, no matter how puffy he made his uniform. It's just that he couldn't. His heart couldn't take it in Brian's rewrite.
But in this version, Isaac, if White Fang killed him now, it would be way more believable, I think, than in the actual show, because they kind of just show up and kill him right away, and you're like, well, who are those guys? That was a little random. But now they've been in the show a while. I feel like it feels a little more natural for them to take out Tuberoff, who's one of their best contributors, right?
Yeah. I think I mentioned this in the recording, but the engineers never really referred to him, and he never really referred to the engineers. I guess they never knew each other, right? Yeah, okay, they're in the colonies. They would never cross paths at any point.
Didn't seem like it, but that could be a good subplot. Maybe he used to be pals with the engineers, and then he went a different way or something.
Just based on his uniform, I assume he's at least partially aristocratic. His name probably has some weight. It's just that he studied science for weapons.
Yeah, maybe the engineers kicked him out because of his fashion.
Yeah, that too. Or I don't know. They wouldn't sit at the same tables at lunch.
They came in with their lab coats, and he came in with his aristocratic clothes, and they were like, this isn't going to work out too rough.
You can't sit with us. Fine, I'm going to go sit with Dermail.
Oh, so the White Fang scientists who have now taken over the mobile doll factory, they see this new program run and they kind of interpret it as a glitch, but we know that something bigger is afoot, Isaac.
Oh no.
So White Fang wins, they take over the moon, they destroy Barge, much like the show, but they can't get control of the dolls since Tuberoff has passed control to Dorothy. She sees this as an opportunity to move up a rung and defects from Oz to White Fang after perhaps she brought up that she has control of the dolls to maybe the people in Ramaphel, or maybe they said, oh, you can give us control, and they didn't want to let her have control. So she is spurned, and she says, I'm just going to defect and take this power for myself. So I think this is a stepped increase in power for Dorothy, which makes sense. So first she was a Treize tag-along attaché, then she was the Saint Kingdom invasion leader, and now Ramafeller is not giving her her due. She's not moving up fast enough, so she defects with the power of the mobile dolls for White Fang.
Wow, can I ask, at this point in your rewrite, how many dolls does she have compared to the Ramafeller kind of run-of-the-mill units?
I would imagine it's basically the same as when White Fang took it over in the show. So she's got the Virgos on the verge of the Virgo too.
So pretty sizable.
Yeah. Because when Tuberov died, he was like pumping those things out, right? They were like max capacity. Yeah.
There were a lot of shocked faces at Ramaphila headquarters when they saw her packing up and going to space.
Yes, exactly. All right, Isaac. So now we're getting into Act 3, the final battle. So White Fang, led by Zechs, versus Oz, led by Treize, versus the Saint Kingdom, which is essentially the Gundam Boys at this point. So now with their male dead, Tuberov dead, and Dorothy gone, Treize comes back, much like he did in the show, to lead Oz. And while he ousts Relena, he allows Relena to leave with Noin and Howard in secret, and I guess they can take Sally too. So they take the Peace Million and presumably the Gundams, and they leave. Cans offers Zechs the ability to lead White Fang like the show, but now we see that Zechs is spending more time in Epion, and it's having a worse and worse effect on him. Maybe instead of sleeping normally, he's only sleeping while plugged into Epion's system.
Is it forcing his hair to turn white?
Maybe.
For a 27-year-old man.
He has the same condition as Annabelle Gatto does.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. You think Annabelle dyes it, or that's all him?
I don't know. Maybe that's just this fashion.
I was gonna say, because like he's got this thing going on with his sideburns that like nobody else does.
Sideburns are just, they're hip in space, man.
Yeah, that's how you do it. I mean, think about it. His sideburns that long, they're gonna bounce around in space. It's gonna look cool.
Gets you all the girls when you have those bouncing sideburns.
Especially the blonde ones named Nina. Continue.
So Zechs, he's got no one to share this burden with, like Hero did with Relena. And so now we also show Dorothy hacking into Epion.
Oh, wow.
As part of her trying to apply the Epion system to the mobile dolls. So what is she up to, Isaac? I don't know.
Is this like remote?
It could be however you want, yeah.
Okay.
Epion could be in the hangar bay, and she could have it hooked up to some wires or something. That's fine.
Okay.
So where I'm going with this is we can then infer that the prolonged exposure to the Epion system is causing Zechs to take more extreme actions than he normally would take. Our friend has already told me this is his headcanon, because I asked him after we were done with the show. I said, well, why Zechs doesn't make sense to me? Why is he doing this? And he says his headcanon was because the Epion system was making him crazy. And I was like, that's great. They should have put that in the show. So I'm just going to put that in the show.
Is this like reaching the point where like Canes and other White Fang leaders are kind of like, and like meetings are like they kind of walk on eggshells?
Yeah, I think it needs to be like a noticeable, like, oh man, that Zechs guy, he's kind of like a weird dude,
Yeah, he's like, really? You want to attack again?
Like we were just out there, man.
Yeah, we have to reorganize our troops. What are you doing?
Yeah. So in addition to that exposure, now you can also infer that he's being influenced by Dorothy. Maybe Dorothy is making adjustments to his Epion system, guiding him in a particular way. So as I stated, I think on our previous podcast, I don't think it makes sense for Zechs to kill everyone on Earth, or even desire to kill everyone on Earth, since the Saint Kingdom's there. Even if he was doing this for the greater good of total pacifism. There needs to be a line that he won't cross, but Epion/Dorothy is pushing him over that line artificially. So then we set the two factions on a collision course, White Fang and Oz, and then the Saint Kingdom is our third faction, trying to do damage control. Relena can even do the live stream at the end instead of Lady Un. We'll get to that in a second. Then we go out with a bang here, Isaac, with our final battle.
Oh boy.
So the battle starts. Treize flies into battle again on the Tall Geese 2, because that was legit. That was a great shot. But this time, I'm going to make his Tall Geese 2 also have the Epion system, Isaac. Zechs is going to fire at Treize like in the show, but Lady Un's going to show up and save him in Wing. And I think that's fine, though I think she should die. I don't think you can take that big hit from Libra and survive. I think that's a cheap way out. I think we need Lady Un to die.
Wow.
I mean, come on. She got hit like right in the chest with the big laser.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, Tuberov shot her.
Yeah. She's not doing well, right?
She's been through a lot. Yeah.
We can replace the rest of her stuff in the story with Relena or Sally even. And then having Undie allows me to better accept that Treize is willing to sacrifice himself later, because I didn't like that in the show he was okay with sacrificing himself while Lady Un was still alive waiting for him. So if she's gone, like, he has one less thing to live for, right? So as the boys with the Gundams need help, the Peace Million shows up and brings with it a better upgraded Sandrock and heavy arms and a new Tall Geese for Noin called the Baroness.
Oh, the Baroness. Okay, cool.
Not sure what it would look like. Maybe a feminine Tall Geese looking thing. You can go wild with your imagination here.
Sure, like a Valkyrie.
There you go. Yeah, something. I picked Baroness because he was the Lightning Baron, right? Lightning Count.
Of course.
Get that, symmetry there.
She wants everyone to know that she is his girlfriend.
Yeah, that's right. I am banging Zechs Marquis.
Yeah. Everybody on the battlefield needs to know she is his girlfriend.
It has an insignia on the shield, like hands off Zechs or something, or like Zechs is mine.
Oh god, yeah, just a heart.
And then if the piecemeal needs to show up sooner, Noin can bring the Gundams later. That's fine. So Noin and Hero then discuss Zechs' actions with Relina, and they agree that something or someone must be coercing him. We know it's the Epion system. I think it's important to have the characters acknowledge that Zechs' actions don't make sense. And then Relina can then reveal to Noin how she helped Hero out of the Zero system, implying that Noin may need to help Zechs out of the Zero system. So, the cannon down, Zechs heads out in Epion to take matters into his own hands. Since the mobile dolls are overwhelming on the battlefield, the boys target them and decide they need to make an attempt on assaulting Libra to get to the control center. This places Hero on a collision path with Zechs. However, we may not get there. The other 4 boys go to assault Libra. Then, when Dorothy turns on the interface with the dolls to try and turn the tide, remember in the show she initiated the Zero system and tried to control them.
Right, yeah.
But when she turns it on Isaac, Tuberoff reappears inside the computer. He has AI'd himself, and he takes control of the mobile dolls and turns them on White Fang. But he's also continuing to attack Oz now. He's essentially fighting for himself. He's now on his own side.
Is Dorothy like strapped to that chair and like drooling at the mouth and like kind of twitching, or what's going on with her?
Worse, he is now taking over Dorothy's mind and using her as his own, vessel, because she's connected to him through the Zero system.
Huh. I wonder what relationship they had.
Well, in mine, it's not a good one, I can tell you.
Is it the equivalent of like running into like your grandfather's coworker? You're just kind of like whatever. Maybe you said like 3 words to them in like 10 years.
Yeah, I'd probably have to put something in there about that, about why she was given control of the mobile dolls for sure. So we would need a little more backstory there, I agree.
Okay.
In order to make that happen, I'd probably have to have it be a good relationship on the surface, at least as far as Dorothy's concerned, but maybe Tuberoff has some axe to grind.
Huh. Ultimately, she's a pawn.
Yes.
No matter what relationship they had.
Right.
He needed a warm body in that seat, and that's what she did.
Yep. So Tuberoff then kills Cans via Dorothy and gives him a lecture about how he gave all his power to the wrong people. I think this is a fitting end for Cans because he continuously was the one not doing it himself. He's the opposite of Thanos, right? So remember that scene? Thanos grabs the gauntlet and he's like, fine, I'll do it myself. I feel like Cans is the anti-Thanos. He tried to get the engineers to do something for him. He tried to get the Gundam boys to do something for him. He tried to get Zechs to do something for him. He's tried to get Dorothy to do something for him. Come on, man. If you're going to be the dude, you got to man up and do it yourself. And so it finally backfires here. Tuberoff now has a commanding presence. So he kills, I'm going to call it Tuberoff Dorothy, kills Cans.
Torothy.
Dorothy.
That's such a good analysis of Kane's. Like, if you think about it, the only time we see him do something, the only time he actually takes out a gun and like fires it in anger, it's against unarmed people.
Yeah.
It's against the engineer.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you, he's not a fighter, him and his vest, him and his space vest.
And it's probably bulletproof too, but like he's just so paranoid he doesn't trust it.
So Tuberoff Dorothy is now still on Libra, so now he has a vested interest in protecting Libra because he has to stay alive, right? This is also fitting for Dorothy because she finally got to the top, right, at White Fang, but it backfires on her, and so she finally gets defeated by the thing she didn't understand but tried to exploit for her own gain. So, Tuberoff Dorothy is now in control as the boys are fighting the dolls. He hails Treize on the comms, and this is when Treize realizes that Dorothy has been controlled by Tuberoff. This happens during Treize's duel with Wu Fei, so Treize cuts the duel short and flees or surrenders by pulling off his own arm and telling Wu Fei that a real man knows there are more important things, such as saving Dorothy, than the duel, and he shouldn't always try to fight first and not be so selfish. So Wu Fei here learns this valuable lesson. He returns to the battlefield against the Virgos. And this keeps Treize alive a little bit later. So Hero and Zechs have their duel where Hero cuts off Zechs' arm, like in the show. So here in the show, this is when Zechs volunteered to go try to blow up Libra, and he kind of disappeared. But in this version of the show, he is still compelled by the Epion system / the Dorothy system to follow through, so he doesn't offer to blow up Libra. Treize then comes upon Hero and Zechs, and Libra is starting to get close to Earth, so Treize knows time is running out and that the Zero's rifle is the only thing that can destroy Libra if necessary. He asks Hero to go save Dorothy if possible before that is necessary, because obviously Treize, Dorothy's still related to Treize. I don't think Treize wants to see Dorothy die if he can help it. So Noin then joins and asks Treize to hold Zechs off long enough until she can get there to talk him down, like Relina said, so maybe she can help him. So Treize agrees. Relina live streams this to the world, showing Treize trying to solve everyone's problems nobly and that he values life, such as Dorothy and Zechs. Treize says it's a fair fight because they are both now missing an arm on their suits. And Treize and Zechs duel to a stalemate with sabers. Noin arrives and gets out of the Baroness. Treize holds Epion back in time for Noin to open the cockpit, because all cockpits are open in the after colony century, as we learned. And she interfaces with Zechs. A Virgo 2 approaches, though, and it's Cans. He's not dead yet, Isaac. He's come to kill Zechs, but Treize blocks the delicate Epion situation with Noin and Zechs with his body and takes fatal damage. He gets off a shot that destroys Cans once and for all before heading to Libra to self-destruct and damage the reactor like Zechs did in the original. So I think this redeems Zechs a bit, gives us the Zechs versus Treize duel we wanted, and gives Treize a better death. A Tall Geese versus Epion gives us a corrupted Zechs and Epion fighting the purer version of himself that he used to be, which is Treize and the Tall Geese. And it also gives Zechs a reason to sort of do better or make amends in Endless Waltz.
Wow.
So Noin frees Zechs. They then jettison Epion and self-destruct it on Libra, or otherwise get rid of it. Maybe they send it into the sun as a joke to Endless Waltz. And then flee in the Baroness. Once Libra's reactor is hit, the Tuberoff Dorothy takes off in a mobile armor, Isaac. We're going to call it the Hydra, because that's the only constellation bigger than the Virgo.
Of course.
Maybe it combines something from all the Gundams. It's got a bird Hydra mode from Wing, Gatlings from Heavy Arms, Scythe Claws from Death Scythe. Dragon heads look like Ultron's dragon heads, and...
Wow.
I couldn't think of anything from Sandrock, because you know what, Sandrock? Man, you really need something else on that suit. There's not a lot going for it. The Gundam Boys team up to defeat it with a knockdown, drag-out duel where they all use the Zero system and they take orders from Hero. They finally have it restrained, and then maybe they cut off all of its heads one by one, with Hero ready to take the shot and finish it off, which would mean killing Dorothy. When Relina interfaces with the dolls from onboard Libra, she has experience now from going into the Zero system with Hero, so she goes in to try to save Dorothy. And in this sort of zero system state, or like realm, whatever you want to call it, she shakes Tuberoff off. But then, surprisingly, Dorothy attacks her, because Dorothy is ashamed that, that Relina had to come to her rescue. But Relina lets Dorothy beat her up until Dorothy admits, that she's, basically a monster and wrong about everything, and gives in. The dolls fall, no longer being controlled by Dorothy, and Hero decides not to take the shot, which goes along with the series theme of total pacifism. He says mission complete, and then the boys go and they tear apart Libra so that it can burn up during re-entry, and it appears they all go down with Libra, allowing them to be, quote, dead to the world and go out as heroes.
Wow.
And there you go. That's my Gundam. I'm going to call it Gundam Meteor. I'm not going to call it Gundam Wing, because that's a weird title.
Wow. So, does it end with Relena becoming the leader? Or just a nebulous peace descends?
Yeah, well, everyone else is pretty much dead. Maybe she doesn't have to be a leader. I don't know. I would assume she would hand it over to some democratized system, right?
I like how Kane's got a customized Virgo with a cockpit just for him. And it has a blue vest. It's like painted with a vest. So you're able to identify him.
Coming to Premium Bandai, the Can's version of the Virgo with a vest.
You definitely had a superior ending to the original. And I definitely like how you cut out a lot of the filler while at the same time making the school like really appropriate and actually work. And making them communicate from day one, so that wasn't all that nonsense of like looking for each other. And really, the only two that met each other and got along were Trilla and Catra.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and then in my version, they totally like hook up and get together.
Oh, it's just so blatant, right?
Yeah.
How's that work though? Like, there's a knock on their door and like, hey, we're having a meeting, and they're like, we're gonna need 20 minutes.
I don't know. I'll have to hire a lot of consultants to get that scene right.
All right, that's a good idea. You want to go into your Endless Waltz?
I didn't do an Endless Waltz because I thought that, again, Cans and Deckham were sort of interchangeable. But if I was going to do Endless Waltz, Isaac, I would do something similar to what I did in our episode, is that I would make Marimea the actual daughter of Treize and Lady Un, both of whom are now dead in my version. And it was just something that Un didn't know about. They took her away from one of Un's personalities that never resurfaced. And I would also give Barton more... He'd have to have something better than serpents.
Right.
I think my main Endless Waltz change would be something around Marimea.
You'd age her up? You'd kind of double down on the whole she's replaceable and there's like multiple Marimeas, or what?
I think I would go the opposite way. In my version, she'd really be a Kushrenata.
Oh, wow.
You don't need her to be replaceable. I think I would maybe cut Barton out and maybe make... I don't know.
Yeah. Or Barton's the puppet and she's actually, gung-ho about ruling the world.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
So overall, my goals with this fix were I wanted to fix the Gundam Boys' lack of togetherness / commit to a format. 2, make Hero and Relina a little bit better in terms of a believable relationship via the Zero system, right? They reached that point of understanding. I just wanted a better clarification on the plot throughout the show. If we're going to do White Fang versus Oz, then let's do White Fang versus Oz. I wanted to give Noin a Gundam or Gundam equivalent, so I gave her the Baroness. I wanted to justify Zechs' actions at the end. I wanted to give us a Treize versus Zechs duel, which we didn't get in the show. I wanted Treize to have a better death than what he did in the show. I thought it was a little anticlimactic. Had to get my Tubarov AI ending in there, and then we had to have a stronger main villain at the end. So that was Tubarov / Can / Dorothy.
Torothy.
Torothy. So there it is, listeners. Hate it, love it. Let me know in the comments.
Comment below.
All right, Isaac. That was a lot from me. How did you tame this beast?
So I approached it as I'm in the same ballpark. I can just move the players around. It's still going to be the same game, though.
Okay.
So I wanted to call it Gundam Wing Meteor, but since that was taken now, I feel like a more appropriate name might be Gundam Wing Squadron.
Oh, there you go.
Because that's really what they function as.
Oh, I like that.
So here we go. Starts off pretty much the same way with the Alliance unifying Earth and then moving on to take the colonies. Years pass, and the colonies send the Gundams to Earth during a meteor shower. That's their cover. No problems getting to Earth. Everyone thinks it's a meteor shower.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Right.
They really should have put that in the show.
I really wanted to get that out of the way. Like the colonies aren't stupid, right? They try to get the actual, property on Earth, the equipment.
Well, the colonies must think Earth is pretty stupid because in the show, they're like, all right, send the Gundams in. Let's hope they don't notice. Like, we would notice today.
Right.
With our technology.
If you remember, Oz knew that there was something called Operation Meteor. And they immediately identified Heroes, I think, because his was the most space weapon looking one.
Yeah, well, he also just flew his straight into the atmosphere, kind of like an idiot.
Everyone else's pod, maybe they could have been destroyed easily, but they safely made it to Earth. So yeah, they'll actually use a meteor shower to kind of cover all the Gundams getting to Earth. But Brian, and you know me as someone that always doubles down on something, and let us not forget Gundam Wing is a boy band homage show. Separately going to Earth at the same time, Brian, from the colonies, is L0, the newest and hottest boy band in the Earth sphere, with hits like Sand Rock Your World, Zero Interest Baby, Scythe Up My Soul, Heavy Arms, Heavy Heart, and Shen Longing for You.
Oh, I hope we get full versions of each of those on the OST.
I'm going to need some of our listeners to join in and give me the backup vocal.
But you know what? This works out great because, we've come full circle, right? Because boy bands were popular back then, but now the K-pop bands are really popular, and it's kind of the same thing.
That is exactly what I based them on, with BTS, 2AM, all that stuff. I just said, you know what? K-pop to them is what the colonies' boy bands are to us. So, Earth can't get enough of that music. So, of course, the guys running the show at the colonies, part of this conspiracy, said, we'll make a boy band, we'll send them to Earth. Okay, so L0's global tour is organized by their fan-turned-manager, Relena.
Wow.
And Brian, their tour is scheduled to go across the world. They're going to have concerts in major cities that also happen to be near major Alliance military bases. But unfortunately for the Gundam pilots, Lady Un, Treize, and Zechs are hot on the heels of the Gundam and L0, as they eventually deduce that the attacks on Alliance bases coordinate with L0 concert tour locations. Isn't that funny? Isn't that a funny coincidence?
How many attacks on their bases does it take for them to figure this out?
Probably like five attacks, and then after a while they're like, I mean, in their defense, can you imagine I don't know, being in some government, military or intelligence agency meeting, and you're like, I think the boy band is responsible for the attacks.
Oh yeah, you would never be taken seriously.
Yeah, you'd be laughed out of the room, right?
You'd probably lose your rank. Yeah.
Yeah, we could probably do that in a few episodes where, the Alliance military is like, you Oz idiots, we know you're backed by Rockefeller, but this is nonsense. We can't even tolerate this. Get out of the meeting. I was thinking we kind of 0079 this part of it, right? Where first they fight like a small military base, and then, one that's a little bit bigger, and then a medium size, and so on. But along the way, they're fighting, different Alliance officers. They have like their own little experimental mobile suits, Ace custom mobile suits. There's different Alliance aces they fight. Things like that really, gives it kind of they're fighting different sub-bosses and kind of leveling up feel, right?
Yeah, I like that. It would give the Alliance a little more character. One of the listeners made a comment about that too, about how the rest of the Alliance seemed to be sort of faceless. And right. I definitely agree with him. We got that one episode with those two other guys. I forget what their names are now, but I guess that was like their attempt to make more people in the Alliance stand out. But then there was never any more, so it was just kind of like, oh, I guess they're all just Leos.
Yeah, that was just, oh man, that's why we're writing this, people, because we wanted to give it a try. But throughout these battles, we always notice, Brian, that Oz units always seem to wisely leave before defeat. So eventually, Brian, the Gundam pilots are just rampaging around the world, and the main Alliance headquarters is targeted. But under direct orders from Oz and Rockefeller, Lady Un, Treize, and Zechs withhold the revelation that the L0 boy band are actually the pilots of the 5 Gundams, and that an attack is imminent. So, at this concert, at the same city where the Alliance headquarters is, the Gundam pilots reveal themselves at the end of their concert with their new song, Hero Yui for You. Then they launch into an attack at the headquarters. It's an epic battle, Brian. The Alliance pulls out all the stops. They let out their boss-level units, suits, vehicles, mobile armors, and weapons. The Alliance dictators seem really close to victory, and they really heavily damage the Gundams. But guess who comes to save the day at the last minute, Brian?
Is it Tuberov?
No. Rockefeller and Oz units attack, led by Treize and Zechs. Turns out they launched this coup at the perfect moment. They take out the Alliance leadership, and they help the Gundams in the end.
Oh.
What a stunning twist. How advantageous. But amid the ruins of this city, and there was a lot of like damage going on because, the Alliance, they don't really care. They use whatever massive beam weapons or whatever they wanted to, and who cares what civilians get killed. So Rockefeller and Oz, they live stream while the humanitarian assistance are given out. Maybe there's a bunch of white dolls with the Red Cross on it and handing out supplies or something,
Yep.
Rockefeller and Oz, they declare themselves the new government, and they set out going around the world, helping all the ruined cities and battlefields that the Gundam left in their wake. And they denounce the Alliance leadership as well, and whatever's left of the Alliance in general. They put all the blame for civilian casualties and collateral damage on the Gundams.
Oh.
Meanwhile, in space, Brian, and despite the protests of the Gundam engineers, the colony leaders opened themselves up to diplomacy with Rockefeller and Oz, and they also agreed that the Gundams were ultimately destructive and violent. Can you believe that?
Alienated. Just like the show, yep.
Backstabbed your own team. So, Oz and Rockefeller go into space, start securing colonies one by one, with handshakes and all that, to try to form a new Earth sphere government. But guess what, Brian? They're starting to have these terrorist attacks around different colonies that side with Oz and Rockefeller.
Uh-oh.
They're being done by a group called White Fang. White Fang declares itself the true liberators of Earth and the colonies from the Alliance. And they also announced that they were really the true force behind creating the Gundams. They want their credit. They did all the work in the group project, Brian, and they want their credit. We should get the A. Everybody gets a C.
Rockefeller did nothing. They put their name on it the night before. They did the conclusion, the easiest part.
Rockefeller's the rich kid in class that paid for the essay. They didn't read anything. All right. So, White Fang mobile suits start rising up and striking at Oz and Rockefeller in space. The Gundam pilots are pretty confused at this point, so they figure, well, there's no point staying on Earth. Let's head into space and protect our home colonies. Looks like there's fighting all around the colonies. So they go into space, and while in space, it becomes clear that despite their home turf advantage, White Fang mobile suits are no match for the growing number of Oz mobile dolls. But at this time, Treize, who's realizing that mobile dolls are really becoming the majority and sidelining the regular run-of-the-mill Oz units, decides that it's time to launch a coup. So he launches a coup against Dermail. He gives his usual little speech about, human pilots and dolls are terrible, machines for war, and blah, blah, blah. And he actually takes control of Oz and Ramafeller at this point. Dermail dies, but Stubarov and Dorothy manage to get away.
Does Treize kill Dermail, or how does he die?
I assume, in the shooting, and, Dermail, he's probably going to jump into a shuttle the moment the shooting starts.
Got it.
So in the chaos, somebody shot that shuttle. I would imagine Treize wouldn't try to shoot him, even if they disagree. He'd rather, probably arrest him and stuff like that. But
maybe, ironically, the shuttle was shot down by a Leo when it finally hit something.
That would be very ironic. Anyways, Treize and his faction vow that they're going to end White Fang, and they're going to bring peace to the Earth sphere. Okay, they're going to be the ones to do it.
Okay.
The Gundam pilots, they get kind of divided at this point. Some of them are, their home colonies are underneath White Fang's control. Other ones have sided with Oz. So they kind of split up to a degree, and they even got mixed messages from the Gundam engineers.
I like that.
It's just a world of chaos for them, even in space. But at this time, since Relena doesn't really have much to do, she decides to go back to her roots. She's a peacecraft after all, so she's going to restart the Sang Kingdom and show people on Earth and space how to live through pacifism, Brian. Well, turns out Treize doesn't really like that, so he decides to attack the Sang Kingdom, just like in the original series. And despite Noin doing her best, it turns out the Sang Kingdom really can't withstand all of Oz and Ramafeller's forces on Earth. About the same time, though, it turns out that Treize was actually helped by White Fang, who gave him information that there's another peacecraft within his own ranks, Brian.
Oh.
Can you believe that?
So he does not know that Zechs is a peacecraft in this?
Nope.
Oh,
he had no idea. So it turns out Zechs is the peacecraft, his right-hand man this whole time.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah, but Zechs moves pretty quickly, and he decides to steal Epion, which is right under development, just got finished. He rescues Noin and Relena, gets them out of the Sang Kingdom as it starts to fall. So they head off into space, but Relena, she's not going to join White Fang. She says she can't go along with Zechs' plans to get revenge, so she kind of books it. So Zechs joins White Fang much the same way, underneath Cain's, of course. Relena joins with the Gundam pilots again, and they vow to bring peace to the Earth sphere for all people. Zechs, now calling himself Miliardo, decides to destroy Earth and punish them for destroying the Sang Kingdom twice now. He's had to watch this twice, if you think about it.
He's had it.
Yeah, once wasn't good enough. So under Zechs' leadership, White Fang seizes Oz lunar factories, and they begin manufacturing their own mobile dolls to turn the tide against Oz in space. The Gundam pilots briefly join White Fang's side because some officers at Barge decide to do what should have been done, and they destroy a lot of White Fang mobile dolls, but at the same time also destroy some colonies.
Oh, with the cannon?
Yeah, with the Barge cannon.
Oh, wow, okay.
Barge gets destroyed, though, by the Gundams, and, the other colonies are saved for now.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, Oz has lost a lot of legitimacy in space.
You don't say.
Yeah, so Treize has to deal with that, even though he was against using the cannon. But, in space, whoever was in command of that base probably wanted to live.
Right, yes.
So, while Treize is dealing with the aftermath of that and looking like a villain, even more so, White Fang uses Barge as an excuse to create Libra in the name of defending the colonies. So the final battle begins, as Treize takes Earth's forces into space to fight White Fang at the Battle of Libra, where the Gundam pilots, realizing both sides are pretty much super weapon happy at this point, decide to fight both sides. Treize dies during the battle, and the Earth forces are defeated.
Does he still duel Wu Fei and die, or any particular way?
I found it meaningless because of how meaningless their discussions became at a certain point. So maybe he fights Wu Fei and dies. Maybe he, I don't know, ironically gets killed by a doll. Who knows? Libra gets destroyed. Wing Zero and Epion have their ending, epic battle. White Fang also gets their leaders destroyed, Cain's. And, once Libra's gone, the colonies call for peace with Earth, and it ends much the same way.
Well, I love the band bend. That's an obvious thing that I should have seen. That's a good one.
That was my way of bringing them together and also explaining how they're able to rampage around the world while staying together. It
Right.
gives them the perfect excuse, I thought, and it kind of modernizes and lampshades the whole boy band thing.
I also like the schism, I'll call it, when maybe some of their colonies are under White Fang and some are under Oz. It's a really interesting scenario that I don't think we really had in the show.
Yeah, would have been good. Maybe they even have a few battles against each other or something, but yeah, for the most part, I think they just want to be loyal to their home colony. For my endless Waltz rewrite, L0 begins a new world tour as Earth enjoys peace under President Relena.
Ooh.
However, an attack begins by the Barton Foundation, who are dropping the ruins of Libra and several colonies onto Earth.
Oh, so Libra's still out there just floating around, and he's like, I'm going to go push it on you?
I mean, there's husks of colonies up there. There's probably like the ruins of Barge. There's things you could push around that are pretty big.
That's true.
So faced with no choice, President Relena surrenders to Marimea, who we actually saw throughout the rewrite series that I did, but only as a baby. Now she's old enough to speak. So the drop operation is stopped because Relena surrenders. The Gundam pilots, they realize that the small Marimea army is really thinly stretched, and they quickly work to rescue their Gundams that are not on course to the sun, but instead have been just kind of mothballed, right?
Yes.
Maybe they're going to be disassembled at some point, but they're in just like a military depot for stuff that they're going to eventually get rid of.
Yeah, in storage,
Yeah,
Just under lock and key.
exactly.
Not in the sun.
Yeah, not on a course to the sun. Yeah, God, what happened to the rest of the mobile suits? Were they all sent to the sun?
I don't know.
That never got answered. Anyways, all right. So the Gundam pilots quickly work to rescue their Gundams and take them into battle in space. The Gundam pilots fight the Marimea army at each drop operation before returning to the Earth capital to save Relena and stop the Marimea army occupation force. The Gundam pilots save Relena and they defeat the Marimea army at the capital. However, as they defeat Marimea and they confront her, Barton is revealed to be a human-sized doll, Brian.
Oh, wow.
Under the control of Dorothy, who has secretly been operating from Luna this whole time.
Oh, geez.
Dorothy was really puppeteering this whole thing.
Wow.
And of course, Dorothy, announcing her return, reactivates the Luna factories, and out comes gun dolls.
Ooh.
Dorothy explains that she wanted to seize Earth mostly intact and try to do it the easiest way she could using a puppet like Marimea. But now she'll just destroy the colonies and even Earth with her rampaging gun dolls that are not only based on the Gundams, but they have AI built from the Gundam pilots.
See, that makes a lot of sense, because remember in that one episode they were like, they made Duo fight the Curious in the Vi-8 with Hero and Troa's stuff. I was like, why don't we just put that in all the dolls if that's the best one you have? Like, just, Control C and Control V a few times and put that in all the dolls, and you'll win.
I mean, in their defense, though, the engineers were clearly running that, so maybe they did something where you couldn't do that.
Could be.
If Tubrov was there, he would have controlled C all night, right?
I love the name Gundalls, by the way. That's a good use.
Thanks. And I just imagine them looking like, a doll version of each Gundam. They kind of streamlined it. They very mass produced it. It is what it is. It's exactly what it says on the label. So the Gundam pilots fight their way through Earth and the colonies to Luna, where they defeat very advanced mobile armors under Dorothy's direct control through a Zero system. In this point, the Gundam pilots are actually defeated by Dorothy, Brian.
Oh no.
That AI just got so much better. We really reached the peak. We reached the point where the machines are better than man.
To what degree are they defeated? Are their Gundams destroyed, or
they're not destroyed outright, but just can't move, weapons destroyed, things like that. The cockpit's intact. They're probably roughed up inside the cockpit, but they're out of commission.
Okay.
Only the arrival of President Relena manages to convince Dorothy to not follow in Dermail's footsteps and instead to try for peace.
Oh.
Dorothy agrees, stands down her armies, and the Gundams ceremoniously destroy the Gundall factories, bringing peace to the Earth sphere.
Wow, that's a very diplomatic ending.
I wanted Relena to have an ending where it's her victory fully. We see the series end twice. First, the series itself, where it ends with Relena and pacifism winning. That doesn't work out. Then we see it happen again, where it ends with Relena and pacifism winning. So I wanted this to just happen once.
Got it. Yeah,
So,
that makes sense.
It turns out that Relena and pacifism do have their, effectiveness. They get their moment in the sun.
Yeah, well, it goes with the theme of the show, right? If the theme of the show is pacifism works, then that really flips the expectations on the table, right? You expect the big finale to be like using force to win, with your Gundams.
Yeah, I really wanted to kind of hammer in that, the whole reason everybody transitioned to dolls by the end of the series was because they're better at the end of the day.
Right.
So it makes no sense to go back to humans in Endless Waltz. If anything, the dolls would just get better if someone was working on them the whole time. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's why Dorothy shows up and the dolls win. They defeat the Gundams, which were kind of built for the previous war and not this current war. So
yeah, which makes total sense, because you think that if you were to have an Endless Waltz and Barton was to pick up where Can's left off, wouldn't he be like, all right, let's boot up the doll program and make it a little better, not start from scratch and put these guys in serpents?
Yeah, at the same time, though, he was really relying on all those Treize troops. So
true,
they're very anti-doll.
Yeah, I don't know. He could do both.
Yeah, I guess he could have. He could have been like, all right, we'll send in you guys as leaders, but I'll have a small group of dolls.
I like that in your version, they are kind of
they're a puppet army.
Yeah, they're kind of like the fake out army, right? Like you think they're the threat, and then really there's a much, much bigger one.
They're pretty much the cannon fodder Dorothy was counting on using, but when that didn't work out, she was like, I guess I gotta. She had to Thanos it.
Right. Yeah. That's the secret, people. You gotta Thanos it,
I'd really like a scene with a waltz. By that I mean Dorothy's by herself wearing her Zero System helmet.
Uh-huh.
And she's like waltzing alone because it's pretty much just her at Luna, and you see like the ghost of Dermail dancing with her.
Oh, that's
maybe even Tuberov. Something
creepy
like
as Oh yeah, maybe Tuberov lives in there.
Something like that, or I don't know. She's probably just recollecting about. She's kind of the only one left of their faction, right? Rummelfeller and Oz are kind of gone, so she should have a scene like that. That should be the waltz.
No, I like that because it fits Dorothy. That she's this very cerebral person who maybe she doesn't really open up to anyone in the show.
Yeah, and the closest we got was her kind of breakdown at the end, right? But
yeah,
that was just so weird anyways, that she was even with them.
I also like in your version that you would have introduced Marimea in the series.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea. Again, part of what I didn't like about Endless Waltz was it felt so like tacked on.
Yeah.
Because you don't know either Marimea or Deck Barton. Right? If you knew at least one of them, it would have felt a little more natural. Yeah, so if you introduced Marimea before in the series, then I think that could go a long way to making Endless Waltz feel a little more connected.
Yeah, and you could have done it so easily too. If you remember that scene where there's a baby walking on like a little dock, a little pier.
Oh, yeah.
When he stops that woman from rushing to the baby, you could have just put in like a 3-second line where Treize says Marimea has to make her own decisions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then in Endless Waltz, our minds are blown. We're like, oh my God, she grew up. She didn't fall in the water.
Treize was right. She grew up to be her own woman.
She actually has an irrational fear of water.
That's the ending. The ending is like Signs, when like water gets spilled on her and she goes, ah!
Yeah. Instead of her and Lady Un at the cemetery, it's like Lady Un trying to teach her to swim.
Jumping into the kiddie pool.
She's like, my father said I have to make my own decision. I choose not to swim. So that's it, Brian. I think we did pretty good jobs.
I like it.
I think we should mash our ideas together and actually make it.
Gundam Wing version 2 coming to Netflix 2027.
Gundam Wing Meteor Squad.
It sounds like there needs to be a toy line called Gundam Wing Meteor Squad. I could see that at Target for sure.
You know what's actually going to outsell that, though? It's going to be the playlist for L0, the hottest boy band from the space colonies.
Do you picture the pilots looking like a K-pop band?
I imagine they kind of switch, right? Like they got their kind of K-pop persona, and then they're quick to jump into like pilot suits and actually battle it out and kind of put on their pilot faces.
That's a good idea. I would like that because then you get an excuse to have the like pretty boy designs, but then they don't always look that way. Like in the series, right? They just always look the same way, right? Like Tro's hair was always fabulous. Duo had that braid down to like his knees. If they like switched their personas a bit when it was time to do battle, I think that would give them a little more character.
Yeah, that opens up so many episode ideas too. You can have an episode where they're having a concert and they're, I don't know, doing a meet and greet with some fans, and some of them are young pilots, young male and female pilots, and then it turns out by the end of the episode they're fighting them.
Oh, that's pretty like
yeah, it's very Iron-Blooded Orphans.
Yeah, that's a little morbid.
Yeah, you can also have episodes where they're being interviewed and, there's like 5 Alliance officers interviewing them, and guess who else is interviewing them? It's Zechs.
Oh, yeah. They
let something slip, and Zechs kind of catches on that something's not adding up, but the Alliance officers are like, oh, this is all just for formality, blah, 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 and, hey, can I get an autograph for my daughter or something like that? That kind of leads into the investigation that their story doesn't always hold up depending on who's asking, mainly Oz.
Yeah, I like that, yeah. And they could even be invited to do like a base show, kind of like the old USO tours.
Exactly, yeah. Perfect opportunity to ambush.
Like, oh, thanks for inviting us. And then just blow them up.
Would it be better if there's like a kind of a sliding scale of like the Alliance finally taking it seriously? Like, first Zechs says, I think L0 might be tied to the attacks, and they like just kind of laugh him out of the room. And then Lady Un says it, and like the Alliance leaders are kind of like more dismissive. They're like, that's a ridiculous thing. Just leave, you idiot. They get angry. And then when Treize finally brings it up, at that point, they're like, well, maybe we should look into this, but it's too late.
I think you have to have Zechs and Treize, once they start to be believers, I think you have to have them go ask the guy that they already kicked out of the military for bringing it up. And then see like what he's doing. Maybe now he's like a clerk at a store, like a grocery store, and they have to go talk to him incognito because they don't want to be caught talking to this guy. It could be like a funny episode.
He works at the merch store for L0.
yeah, there you go. And he's like, "Oh, General Treize, I knew you'd come. I've still been doing reconnaissance. I went undercover."
Look at the numbers on these barcodes. They correspond to the number of rounds fired.
He has to have the house, with all the stuff on the walls that's connected.
Oh, yeah, there's like red thread.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
He's just gone insane.
Yep. And Zechs is just like, we shouldn't be here, Treize.
Maybe each episode should end with a new L0 song.
Oh, you have to, yeah. Yeah, I want you to make a full, 2-disc L0 playlist.
It'd be cool if they made songs that like referenced Ramafeller and Oz and stuff like that, the Alliance, right? Like,
oh, yeah.
Kind of like colony protest in a way.
Yeah. Ramafeller's a good word, too. You could definitely make something out of that. Ramafeller, like, tell her it's Ramafeller. I don't know. So.
He's loaded with cash, and that's how you know he's a Ramafeller.
The possibilities are there.
It's endless, Brian.
Oh, so listeners, those are our Gundam Wing rewrites. Let us know your thoughts. Love it, hate it, somewhere in between. What are your ideas? How would you rewrite Gundam Wing? From start to finish. Would you leave it the same? Would you do a heavy rewrite? Would you scrap it? Would you do a light touch? And most of all, send Isaac your L0 song ideas and song titles.
And lyrics if he wrote them.
And if you want to perform them, that's fine too.
Yeah, just be sure to send a link to your YouTube video.
Yeah, here's the deal, listeners. If you send in an L0 song with lyrics, Isaac will sing it for you on the air.
I don't know when, but it will be sung.
We'll duet it
someday.
We'll harmonize it
when we make the album. But
yeah,
don't forget. Also, if you want to do an Endless Waltz rewrite, you're welcome to do that too.
Take us away, Isaac.
Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Before you go to bed tonight, stand next to your bed. Put your hands together. Get on your knees. Look up at the ceiling and hail the Ramafeller Foundation.
You asked me to go out, and I said maybe. But guess what? I got zero interest, baby. Good night, everybody.